but a typical scene with a dozen people sitting around a table talking would take a couple days to shoot, because you have to get all the coverage. You have to shoot these angles, and this person's looking at that person, and you have to then come around for that. And he said, yeah, we're not going to do any of that. I said, really? Okay, what are you going to do? His idea was that first, the camera's always moving. Cameras are always on dollies, and what they would do is the cameras would move back and forth on dollies, and they would shoot the scene wide, and then they'd shoot it close, and they'd shoot it maybe closer, and then they'd turn around the other way and do it again, and that was it. Forget all this coverage stuff. Now, this was a necessity given the film that they wanted to make, with the cast that they had and the amount of money that they had to make it. You kind of look at it, and if you're going to shoot it the way you normally shoot a movie, it can't be done. So you just, we'd have to go out and get another $18 million or don't do the movie. So he didn't want to do either of those things. I'm sure he wouldn't have minded the extra $18 million, but that often comes with strings attached. So they came up with this way of shooting, and we thought, well, that's going to be interesting. And it created a lot of issues. But for him, this wasn't a problem. And this is kind of the interesting thing about his approach to filmmaking. Every constraint like that wasn't a problem. It was just an opportunity to do something new. An actress would show up with a scratchy voice, and they'd give her a line of dialogue explaining why she has a scratchy voice, and it was funny. I mean, some of the best laughs are made up things. And normally, that would be a panic, and you'd have them drinking tea and doing everything you could, and maybe you'd come in and ADR the line, replace the sound later to try to get it right. And he'd say, no, that's an opportunity to do something fun.
Life is messy, and movies are messy, and he liked big, noisy groups. And I just want to quote Robert Altman, because this kind of encompasses the whole philosophy. He said, "In every film I've made, any one of the things that you would say is a high point came as something that was not scripted, not planned, and certainly not directed by me. Because I think that's where you hit that truth button. What I really want to see from an actor is something I've never seen before, so I can't tell them what that is."
Yeah, he told me he had no use for an actor who shows up and says, okay, tell me what to do. He was not interested in that at all.
He was interested in behavior.
Yeah, and then he would take what everyone was doing and direct them all to be consistent with one another, so it would be a coherent movie. And a big part of it, part of the process for all the actors and for the people on the crew and for me also, is to learn his style, to understand his style. And if you've seen Altman movies, you know that he has a distinctive style. And let me just show you a sort of what I consider a representative Altman-esque cut.
I don't believe I ever...
This isn't from the scene that we're going to watch later. This is from quite early in the movie.
I don't believe I ever met William's mother. Did she do something rather original?
I did nothing.
Well, she was a teacher. And so was mine. Oh, well, that's marvellous, isn't it?
Mrs. Sylvia is so clever. She always finds such wonderful sounds. I don't know how she manages. I'm breaking in a new maid. I'm simply worn out with it. Actually, there's nothing more exhausting, is there?
I don't have a lady's maid.
Oh, I was just telling dear Mabel here about my new maid. Honestly, the amount of...
Okay, so the specific cut I had in mind was this one. The cut from here to here. So watch it again.
She always finds...
Now you're listening to another conversation.
I don't know how she manages. I'm breaking in a new maid.
So the camera's, in both cases, the camera's dollying left. It's just with no motivation to the movement. It's just moving. Just because that's what we do in this movie. And, this moment here where they look at each other, that's a found moment. That wasn't scripted or anything. That's just something the actors came up with. And it's fortunate in this take, and only in this take, that the camera happened to be in a place to catch it. Because in the other takes, the camera was someplace else. And it only played, this is a moment that jumped out in the dailies, and it only happened once. And so, when something catches your eye, you try to use it. But this is a very typical Altman cut in that you're listening to something else. You've already, half of your attention has already moved on to what's coming up, and half of it's still here lingering in this. And that's what he wants you to do, is to give you a lot of feedback. Now, one interesting thing about the scene, I'll just scrub through. There's a whole bunch of people in a parlor. Every one of these shots is looking in generally the same direction in the parlor. You know, it's this way and this way and this way and this way, but all that way. They never turned around and shot this way. That's unheard of. To do every shot in the same direction is very unusual, and it causes problems. For example, watch this cut. Watch Maggie Smith's teacup.
I don't have a lady's maid.
Oh, I was just telling dear Mabel here about my new maid. Honestly, it's about...
Now, you probably didn't notice, or hopefully you didn't notice that the first time around, because, you know, I tried to make the cut at a place where she's turning, our attention is turning, and, you know, we're popping out straight out to a wide shot, so hopefully you don't notice.
And that's
But-
also breaking a rule. To pop out
Yeah.
from the same angle to a wider shot is very disorienting.
But that's one of the constraints that I had in this movie because they shot this so fast. Watch the guy in the background. Watch his teacup.
I have a lady's maid.
Oh, I was just telling dear Mabel here about my new maid. Honestly, it's the amount I...
This movie's full of those.
But that's
Now-
where a good editor knows what they're doing, because at sleight of hand, Tim knew that your eye would be going to Kirsten Scott Thomas as she comes in.
I hid that as well as I could, but
But, you know, the cue of Maggie Smith talking and then, so you don't notice it because he knew where your eye was going.
hopefully,
Well, it worked.
yeah.